I would like the panelists to first introduce themselves. Please state your name, what your experience in the medical field, and yeah, and then and something like how would you like me to address you throughout this meeting so that, yeah, so how would you like me to address the meeting? And I think Sarah's gonna highlight the speakers so that they know when to speak, or yeah.
Tenzing, do you want to just call out names first and then we can go down the list?
Sure. So let's start with Dr. Cupoletti.
Hi, I'm John Cupoletti. I started at the Santa Rosa Junior College 50 years ago today, or this year. And I went to UC Davis, got a PhD in biochemistry and biophysics after a bachelor's degree in biochemistry and biophysics. I then did a stint in industry for a year, and then maybe 3 years of postdoc. And then when I was 30, I became an assistant professor at UCLA, stayed there for 5 years, and then came to Cincinnati, where I retired in 2016 after 30 years. And I was a physiologist and a biophysicist, and I studied ion channels, that is, the proteins that make ions cross membranes. And over that time, I spent some 25 years on the medical admissions committee. So I'm pretty used to talking to medical students and people who want to be medical students, and interviewing them and helping them with their applications. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cupoletti. Next, I would say Danielle Sawyer, please. Oh.
Hi there, I'm Danielle. So I also went to the Santa Rosa Junior College and transferred to Davis. And I took 2 gap years before going to the MD PhD program at the University of Arizona, where I am currently on the youth committee as well right now. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Danielle. Next, Sony. Oh.
Hi, I'm Sony. I started at the JC in 2013. Sorry, 2011. It's been longer than that. And I transferred to UC Davis, like Danielle, and got my degree in biological sciences and evolution ecology. And then I took a gap year, hung out with Abigail in the JC, and then I went back to Davis for my MPH, and now I'm a second-year student at Touro University.
And Mark.
Oh. Unmute myself.
You're good.
All right, got it. All right, I got control. How's it going, everyone? My name is Mark Douglas. I am currently finishing up my second year at Stanford Medical School. I started really my true educational journey back at the JC, I don't know, in 2009 or 10, by getting my GED. I didn't graduate high school. And afterwards, let's see, I eventually ended up transferring in 2013 to UCLA, where I got my bachelor's in microbiology. And then in 2015, I took a couple gap years. I came back to Santa Rosa and worked at a outpatient cancer treatment center. And then I started a couple years ago at Stanford. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Mark. So without any further ado, I'll start with the questioning. So for the format of the panel, I decided to start asking each panelist one question so that each panelist gets to answer one question first. And then if other panelists have anything else more to add, they could do it after the first panelist is done speaking. So I'll start with Dr. Cupoletti. And the first question I have is, what are some things that medical school admission committees evaluate in med school applicants?
Okay, so I have there's a link, number 8, in that email that went out. if you could click on that link and go to page 14, it'll be much clearer if you can do that. It's on the email that was sent out.
Do you, Dr. Cupoletti, did you want one of us to show that screen?
Yeah, that would be nice if you could show it.
Yep, and it's called, is that the How Medical Schools Evaluate Applications?
Yes, ma'am.
Or is that the 15 core competencies?
No, question number 8, a very important brochure.
Hang on, which one's question number? I'm just counting down. 1, 2,
They're labeled 1 through 8 on my email.
Here, Sarah, I can share it out.
You can share it? Okay.
Yeah. There we go.
Okay, page 14. Okay. Keep going.
I think it's still loading. Okay, oh. Page 14.
Okay, that's page 14. I'm sure no one can read it.
Oh.
Okay, that's okay. Oh, okay, maybe better. Yeah. Okay, so these are questions that the admissions officers, they were asked, what are the important things that you evaluate at 130 medical schools? And it's, there's a mean importance of ranking on the far left, highest importance, medium importance, and at the bottom, lowest importance. Academic metrics in the highest importance at the top there are the GPA cumulative in biology, chemistry, physics, and math. So that's a very important, that you work very hard on your biology, chemistry, physics, and math, and start off good and keep going. Your GPA, your grade trend is also very important. What we think of is if you keep improving, that says that you know how to improve. And completion of pre-medical course requirements that you should start now and then finish in your bachelor's degree. That is very important also. The Mcat is also important, and before I finish, I will have you go to the next page, not yet. In terms of experiences, which is the second column, it's community service, volunteer in the medical and clinical field. Next is community service volunteer, not medical clinical field. Physician shadowing, so you know what a physician does, and leadership that you can gain in any number of ways. I would like to contrast that with the medium importance, and that's paid employment in medical clinical, a research lab experience, other extracurricular activities, and military service. So those are a little bit lower, but they're also can figure into the evaluation. US citizens are primarily considered in public schools, not so in private, not so much in private. State residency in public schools, so if you're from California, shoot for a California school, at least a public one. And then whether you're from a rural or urban underserved background. This is a really important metric because if people who are coming from an underserved background are still getting straight A's and high Mcats, they must have really done something right to overcome their difficulties. And then the other data is the interview results. So if you come into my interview and you insult me, or you tell me that you don't like Italians, You'll serve anybody Italians, or you say anything bad about anybody else, you're not going to get through my interview, period. So could we just go to 15 for just 1 minute? Next page. Okay, so this is a page of GPA total starting at the top from 3.8 to 80 to less than 2.0. And you see if you go from 2.0 to 2.6, not too many people get in. But if you have a very high MCAT score, maybe the highest, maybe 42% will get in. But with the lower MCAT score, you won't get in. But it's interesting to note that even with a perfect GPA and the highest MCAT score, not everybody gets in. The number is 85 to 89%. So there are other things like we just talked about on that table on page 14 that figure very heavily into whether someone gets into medical school. And I got a question about MMI, and I've done it both ways. For whoever asked, MMI is where the students go in and answer questions. I like the other way better. I like to face my students and talk them through, so that if they have a difficulty, I can talk to them and tell them how they can overcome that difficulty. Okay.
Thank you so much. If other panelists have anything to add, please, you can speak now. Oh, okay. And Dr. Cupoletti, quick question for you. Could you explain to everyone what's the MMI?
Okay, MMI is, so you can imagine the standard one where you come to the medical school, you have an appointment with a physician or a scientist like me, someone on the medical admissions team, and you walk into my office and you sit down and we have an hour to talk about your application, and I'll go through all your grades, I'll look at your experiences, I'll evaluate your level of empathy and your leadership skills, and whether in the end, whether I think you would make a good fit in our medical school, or any medical school for that matter. The other is they walk in and there'll be a series of questions, the MMI, there'll be a series of questions on a table and sort of random, and they'll be asked to answer them. And so they're not actually being interviewed, they're being sort of quizzed. And the results of that result in to help with the decision making of whether to admit.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think Danielle had something to add. Here, let me just unmute.
Yeah, let me.
I did have one other thing to add. So I absolutely agree with everything Dr. Cupoletti just said. I do think too, coming from an out-of-state or like on an out-of-state admissions committee, we look a lot at fit too, especially when we're essentially a public school out of state. And so it's really important that you convince, these out-of-state schools why you would travel, however many miles in order, to attend their school, and why it's your #1 school, whatever it is. It should be a good fit for you, and you should consider that when you're looking at schools. The other thing too that we look at the University of Arizona also is cultural and diversity awareness, as well as your motivation for applying to medical school. And, we kind of assess that. It's kind of more subjective, but I think those are also important things that we look at. And
Yes.
it's traveled too. So how far you've come.
Yes, I agree. One thing that is important when you're looking at medical schools is if you're very interested in, let's say, neurology, and they don't have a neurology program, you're pretty much wasting your time.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I think in this question, we talked about the importance of MCAT, and then this question goes to Danielle. Is what do you think what are some important MCAT resources that students can look into at this stage?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. And I also think that the timing is important too. And I think Mark would probably be a good person to kind of touch on, you know, timing wise, when you should consider taking your MCAT as an SRJC student transferring. But as far as resources, I think we could probably all, you know, touch on what we used. I used Kaplan. I used one of their online, you know, classes and their books. And I took like a million practice tests, which I highly recommend you get into the habit of taking these very, very long exams and sitting down and staying focused for that amount of time without any distractions. I think it's super important. Yeah, I don't know. Do you guys have anything to add?
Yeah, just to echo off of Danielle, I used Princeton Review, and there's a lot of options. Like you can either just buy the books or like purchase a course if you're someone who needs like more direction and need kind of like structure to your studying. But unfortunately, those cost like $3,000, so not everybody has that much money. But there's a lot of free MCAT resources as well. When I was studying for the MCAT, like the subreddit for MCAT, I think it's just called r/MCAT, was really helpful because a lot of people were there and they would post like flashcards or for like Anki programs and stuff, you could use those. They also posted a lot of like free resources, like lectures that you could listen to if that's like the kind of learner you are. So there's a lot of free stuff out there, but I think unfortunately you do have to like buy a lot of the prep books and also some of the practice tests. And I forgot how much those cost, but sometimes they do come as like a package and stuff, so you could do that. But definitely don't skimp out on getting the practice test because you really need to have that feeling of sitting for this 5-hour exam and making sure you don't get like, you know, overwhelmed at the end.
Can I add something to that?
Sure, go ahead.
So I would often get students come to my office and they would have like a 3.8 GPA and they were very proud of that. But then when I got to organic chemistry, they would have a C- or a C. And I had to stop at that point, explain to them that usually you don't get into medical school with a C in organic chemistry. And then the question is, what are they going to do besides freaking out in my office? And I think it's very important. If you think you're having trouble in a course like chemistry or biology, then invest in a couple of used textbooks in chemistry in addition to the one that you were taught with, and read all three of them and focus on the things that are common to all three, because that's got to be the important stuff. Another thing that helps is to tutor in a class that you've had trouble in. It backs you up and you learn the important things that are supposed to be learned. Those are much less expensive ways of making up for deficiencies or difficulties.
Thank you so much. And piggybacking on what Danielle said regarding the timing of the MCATs and everything, would Mark like to speak? Mark, could you speak on like that issue of when is it proper for students to take the MCAT test?
Well, I think it's definitely a very personal decision. It depends on, you know, definitely what your academic preparation was during community college and once you transition to your 4-year institution. For me, after going through the process, I felt like I could have taken it a lot sooner than I actually did, because of the majority of the coursework that was, you know, the content that was reflected in the MCAT was, you know, stuff that I had learned and that I was actually pretty rusty on by the time it came to taking it, because I had taken, you know, the bio series, the chemistry series, organic chemistry, physics, you name it, all at the JC. And I waited until after I had gotten my bachelor's degree to take it. And, there's arguments for and against, when exactly you should take it. But I really was like, wow, kicking myself. Like I could have taken this a lot sooner when the knowledge was so fresh and concrete in my mind. And later on, I was a lot more stressed. I had a lot more going on, in comparison to being at the JC. What I recognize looking back is how much of a low stress environment the SRJC was for me, and how subsequently, like my mind just worked. It was just more comfortable. Things were clearer to me. I could get the support that I needed, and I felt really, really prepared. I know that's not everyone's experience probably at the JC, depending on which courses you take or whatever. But that was just one thing that I would suggest you consider. Don't sell yourself short or think that you have to wait until you graduate to take the Mcat. Because like 99% of the knowledge that I needed to be successful in the Mcat, I got at the JC. The only course, the prerequisites that I wasn't able to take at the JC was biochemistry, because they don't offer it, but everything else was offered there, at the 2-year level. But that being said, I did what I did. I was successful. I went through the Princeton Review program, which I know a lot of these programs, they can seem like they cost a lot of money, and they definitely, it's a good chunk of change, like $2,000, $3,000. But, it's definitely an investment in yourself. And I knew that at that stage that I was at, I definitely needed to put that money in order to do as well as I possibly could. Because I just wanted to take it once, do it as well as I possibly could, and move on. I didn't want to have to take it multiple times. And I think, unfortunately, like a lot of students end up doing that. And you just get more, it's like a cycle of just like vicious, negative, stressful energy that, because the second time around, there's that much more pressure to do better than your previous score. So it can sort of be counterproductive. But yeah.
I think some.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Can I add something really quick?
Sure, go ahead.
So I made the mistake when I was trying to take the Mcat to do it while I was like studying for school. And I went to UC Davis, so we were on the quarter system, and that was like nearly impossible and a complete waste of time, and like $500 that I spent registering for this exam. So I really would not recommend doing that. I thought like I just wanted to get it done with so that I could just graduate and not have to worry about it. But I ended up retaking it because I didn't do well enough on that attempt anyway. So that's definitely something to consider. Like if you have a summer that you could devote, I think a lot of my friends that were that I knew at Davis were taking it kind of the summer after their first year at Davis, so after they transferred, because most of the schools that you go to, if you're a bio major, you have to take biochemistry in that first year. So as soon as you finish that course, like it'll be fresh. And biochem is actually like a really, really important part of the biological sciences section of the Mcat. So it's nice to have that like fresh in your mind and stuff. So I would recommend like ideally that summer after your first year transferring, but I took it again after I graduated. So it really like, it depends on you and like when you feel comfortable and stuff.
Thank you I think you answered the question that I was about to ask next regarding the Mcat and when to take it. And actually the next question is too, Sony, is I know there are different types of medical school, and we have touched on the topic of how medical schools pick students. But this question is how should students pick which medical school they apply to? What are some important things that people should look into when applying to different medical schools?
Yeah, that's a really important question, because I think it's kind of overwhelming when you apply to medical school. Was that me? Okay. Anyways, so it's like a lot of people end up applying to like sometimes like 30 to 50 schools, which is crazy. But that's kind of like how most people do it. And so like making a list of schools that you're going to apply to is a really, really important part of the process that should not be understated, because basically there's a lot of schools out there, but they have a lot of criteria that they look for in their candidates. And they're not always just like, oh, they need to be community oriented or have an MCAT of this much. But it's like for example, University of Washington in Seattle is a really great school that's focused on primary care. And when I was first applying, I was like, okay, yeah, I'll apply to that school because they are the kind of medical school that I want to go to. But when you look at their information more, it turns out that they like only accept I think 20% of their class is out of state. And of those out of state people, I think 30% of those are from Idaho or Montana or states that don't have medical schools. So it's really important to do your research and especially look for which schools have a reputation of taking out of state students. And a lot of public state schools aren't the kind of schools that you should be applying to, because you probably won't be able to get into them because a lot of their spots are already reserved for in-state students or students from states where there are no medical schools. So when I was applying and making my medical list or my medical school list, I used a resource that's called the MSAR, or I'm sorry, I don't know I forgot what the acronym stands for. I don't know if you guys know, but it's basically a registry of every single medical school in the United States, well, MD school, and it might have DOs too, I'm not sure. And you can filter it by different categories that you're interested in. So I don't know, mean MCAT or GPA, and then do they admit out-of-state students or not, their tuition, things like that. So that was kind of how I created my school list. And it ended up working out for me. But it's really important because I know a lot of people who made that mistake of just kind of going for the schools that were their dream schools that they really liked and wanted to go to. But unfortunately, because of the logistical reasons, they couldn't get in, even though they were perfectly competent candidates. You just have to kind of tweak your application to cater to the schools that have the highest chance of accepting you. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah, thank you. And I think someone shared the resource that you're talking about, MSAR.
Yeah.
On the chat. So, and anyone else have anything to add or? Oh, there you go.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I did. I think Tenzing, I'm pretty sure I sent you an email also with the facts table from the AAMC that pretty much had the breakdown by school for out-of-state versus in-state students that applied and the percent that matriculated.
Yes, I think I have it here. Do you want me to show it up on the share it with everyone on the screen right now, or?
Or you could just send it out to them, whatever's easier.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I've organized all the information that you and Dr. Cupoletti sent to me via the emails on a Google Docs. And I was going to send it out to everyone once this, at the end of the Zoom conference by asking their emails, and then give it to Sarah as well.
Great.
Oh, thank you. And, okay. And I also had one more question for Sony is, could you talk about the differences between DO and MD schools?
Yeah, sure. So DO schools are also medical schools. So there's there's a lot of history to this basically, but there is a divide between the allopathic medical philosophy and osteopathic medical philosophy. But what you should know is that they're both accredited medical schools that graduate accredited physicians and medical students. So there's no functional difference. There is a difference in terms of a little bit of the curriculum. So DO schools students, we learn exactly the same thing as MD schools. We just have an additional component that's called osteopathic manipulative medicine. And it's kind of I guess you could compare it to physiotherapy or something like that, where you just learn to work with your hands and learn a lot about the musculoskeletal anatomy of the human body. And that's a huge component of osteopathic philosophy as well. And there is also a lot of logistical differences in terms of applications. So they follow a completely different application system. It's called a COMAS instead of AMCAS. So if you're applying, you need to apply to through a different application service. So a lot of people think that DO schools they're not real medical schools, or that you're kind of, they're like inferior or anything. So that is not true. It's just that like DO schools are lesser known. So a lot of the students that they end up accepting tend to have like lower MCAT and lower GPA scores and stuff because of that. But they still graduate, like I said, accredited physicians. As a DO, you can go into like any specialty you want to. There's like no restriction in terms of that. And like more and more, actually, the trend is that like there's kind of a merging between the two medical schools. So now, like it used to be that like DOs had like DO residencies and MDs had MD residencies. But I think as of a couple of years ago, they're actually like merged. So there's a lot of like cross application and stuff. So DOs apply to MD residencies and stuff, and then they're like accredited through that process. So there's really not that like I said, there's no functional difference between the two. It's just that like I applied to DO schools because as kind of like a backup, and because I knew that like my MCAT score like wasn't as high as I would like it to be, and I like really wanted to make sure that I got into medical school the first time around, and I also wanted to stay in the area. So like California public medical schools are like nearly impossible to get into. So so that was like one of the reasons I applied DO. But yeah, so that's basically the difference. It's just that there's a slight difference in curriculum and the application system is different, and like the degree that you're awarded is like nominally different, but not really functionally.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Next question, I think touching back to what Dr. Cupoletti shared and talked about when in this first question was about there are different criteria that students should focus on when applying to medical school. And one of them was regarding experiences by volunteering in different activities. I wanted to ask, this is an open question to like all the panelists, is what do you think were some important skills that students should gain as a community college students when applying to medical school, like soft skills or like maybe some like important things like going like getting some programs or like having some certificates and stuff like that?
So I can tell you my experience. As the table shows, the volunteer experiences are most highly valued, and those experiences where you have hands-on, face-to-face contact with patients are extremely important. For example, I would always ask the students, did you interact with patients? And they would say yes. And I would ask them then, do you have a experience that you had with a patient that you can share? And then often either they could or they couldn't. If they couldn't, means they didn't really have any kind of meaningful interaction. If they did have an interaction, I would ask, and they would tell me about it, and then I would ask them what their how they felt about the interaction and how they think that the patient felt about the interaction, or how their being there helped the patient. So it is extremely important to have real experiences where you get a chance to have interactions with patients, and these can be communicated and asked about. And so I would really encourage people to find experiences where you can interact face to face.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Cupoletti.
I think Mark has a.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry for that. There you go, Mark. Oh.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree with what Dr. Cupoletti was saying, and just to add a little bit to it, I think the sooner you can do it, the better. I know, just reflecting on my own experience at community college, I think at the time, like, I lacked the confidence to go seek those type of experiences, and I always perhaps pushed them off, thinking I was doing enough, I was busy working or whatnot. But it's actually more manageable than you think it might be. Just to start doing something in which you're getting exposure to the medical field. whether that's shadowing 1 day a week or somehow, you know, you need to brainstorm, ask questions, see what can be done locally. And just because you're, you know, a community college student doesn't mean you can't start doing this, like, you know, while you're in school here. I think, yeah, there's something that's really important to me personally is just like getting over the stigma that I think that is associated with a community college background, and recognizing that the type of education you're getting is actually a strength, and your background is actually the type of, you know, it reflects the type of people that we need in medicine, in the medical field, and in medical schools. People who are homegrown, who are going to come and give and return and give back to their community. So recognize that your experience as a community college student is a strength, and you're worthy and deserving to get started on actively working towards your goal of becoming a physician. So don't be afraid to reach out and make connections, even if that's just, you know, your local doctor that you see on occasion, to see if you can start shadowing that way, if that's your only connection.
Yeah, I would also add, don't ignore opportunities to be a service volunteer, not in the medical field. For example, helping to feed people who are hungry. This is really important, and it is good for you, and it trains you, and it will be considered a strength.
I also wanted to add, like, it is far easier to find really cool opportunities to do community service, medical or not, at this point than it is when you transfer. Because at UCLA or UC Davis, you will be one among like 20,000 people. And it's really hard to stand out when you're at that stage. But if you start doing it now, then like you're not like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, when you transfer, you're going to be one among like a mass of pre-meds. And right now you're one among like maybe 20 or something. And that means that you have a better chance of standing out. That means that like all of you can have those resources and share them equally, right? Like you can find a place to volunteer and have that on your resume already when you transfer. And that is a strength, because when you transfer and you're applying to like student-run clinics or something like that, you already have that experience on your side. And that is something that definitely makes you stand out from the other students who are in your position who didn't have that experience. So it's really important to get started on that as soon as you can. And like Dr. Cupoletti mentioned, it doesn't have to be anything medical. I think as someone who's like read a lot of admissions essays, I think it really, like any experience that helps you develop a sense of empathy and like genuine connection with people, no matter what form that takes, is really like, it really makes you stand out. I've read essays that are about, you know, like something that's non-medical, and I can still remember them very vividly, because when you read it, it's really immediate that like this person is genuine. This project that they did came out of a genuine passion, and they were really able to connect with people. And those are the kind of students that admissions committees always look for, who demonstrate real empathy. And that can come from any, you know, of a variety of different experiences.
Yeah, can I add one other thing? When I interview a student, I always ask them, have you ever helped anyone? If they say yes, I ask them to explain to me who they helped and how they helped them, and how their effort helped the other person. It is not very good when they say they can't tell me that anybody they've ever helped. And it was very surprising how many students were unable to tell me about someone they helped.
Yeah, just to add on to that too, whenever I read applications, I think we're always looking for people who demonstrate compassion, kindness, and empathy. And I think also looking to see, you know, if that student, if I feel like they can work with patients that are sick and maybe dying, because everybody wants to help people and everybody wants to save lives, but sometimes that's just not, it's not possible. And, academics is one thing, right? How you're going to do on your boards, but a whole nother side of it is how are you going to interact with people, patients? Do you want to work with the underserved? Can you work with, these different communities, and can you do it well? And I think a lot of that also boils down to your level of maturity. And I think in an application, you can almost instantly tell, who's had this life experience and maturity, and who would be able to handle, those kinds of hard patient situations, and who maybe, just hasn't had that experience yet.
Okay, and I think we had a question for Dr. Cupoletti regarding his opinion, on your opinion on like working as a scribe for volunteering. Is that something that med school like as an applicant would look good or bad, or something that's like not too good or not too bad either?
Can you start the first part of your question again? I didn't think I hear it.
Oh,
I heard
sorry. Someone wanted to ask you what's your thought on like as an experience as a student working as a scribe for a doctor or at a medical facility.
A scribe is a little, it doesn't provide for the one-on-one that we were talking about. Perhaps helping in an emergency room. Perhaps having some in the shadowing experience would be okay. But working as a scribe would probably be a paid position, and it would be less important. I would look for other kinds of experiences that actually get you a chance to interact. It doesn't matter if you're helping somebody get to their bed, if you're cleaning, helping them with hygiene, anything that is a chance to interact, even if it's just talking to them.
Okay, thank you so much for answering that question. And the next question is this to all the panelists. Again, I think most of you have some experience taking gap years before applying to medical schools. I just wanted your opinion on gap year. Taking gap year, what do you feel like? When should students take gap year? And like, how did that, like taking gap years for you at least help your help you strengthen the application to med school?
Yeah, I can start. I took 2 gap years. So I graduated from UC Davis, and at Davis and while I was at the JC, I did research. And after doing that, I did volunteer opportunities and things like that too, but I really wanted to get a clinical experience because I'm an MD PhD. So I'm kind of deciding do I want to apply MD PhD or just PhD or just MD? That was a big decision for me, and I felt like I needed more clinical experience to really make that decision. So I did spend my gap year applying to medical school, which is a very long and time-consuming process, especially if you're applying to a large number of schools, and also working in as a medical scribe in a clinic. And I personally really gained a lot of value, I think, from working in that environment. And I, even to this day, whenever I have to write up SOAP notes or H&Ps, I just am so thankful that I had that experience. It's really helped me as I'm in medical school now. But one other thing I will say, when we review and evaluate applications, if you do not take a gap year, I look very, very closely to see the level of maturity, because I think oftentimes even a year of, living life and figuring things out on your own and paying rent and figuring those things out is really important and really gives you a lot of maturity, no matter how you spend it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to continue that thought. I think when I decided that I needed to take a gap year because I wouldn't have finished my application in time, I was like really, really disappointed in myself because I think a lot of students like put that pressure on themselves to like kind of do it as fast as possible. And that's like obviously understandable. You don't want to be in school forever and all that. But I think like being on the other side now, like what Danielle said, it's, man, you can just see it when someone has taken a couple years off to just work or like, you know, try and figure out what they want to do, or, you know, really figured out what their passion is, like why they're coming to medicine. It's just so immediately apparent when you see that in a student versus someone who's like just come out of undergrad. Even among my classmates, like it's really easy to tell how much experience someone has had and how that shapes them as a medical student and as a future physician. Because like, I don't know, just like the more life that you have time to live, the easier it will be to like be a compassionate person who understands your patients. And that is like truly what this is all about. So I would really encourage you all to not put that pressure on yourself and just kind of let things go as they come. And, you know, and of course that doesn't mean like you have to take a gap year or else like you won't be ready or anything, but it's just like, it's kind of like checking in with yourself and seeing if you feel mature enough to be able to answer some of these questions about why you want to do this and what your passions and interests are. And if you feel ready, then go for it. But it definitely took me some time to figure that out.
And with that, I think I know we only have like 9 more minutes to the meeting left, but I just wanted to ask if anyone else below had questions. You can type them in the chat. I can ask the panelists those questions. If not, yeah. I don't think anyone has. Oh. Someone asked on the chat, how helpful are pre-med advisors? I'm not sure if anyone wants to answer that.
Yeah. Well, actually, maybe if somebody has experience with pre-med advisors, because I never did. So
the quality varies, I would say. Mm-hmm. Yeah. UC Davis is very, very like, God, we are so fortunate to have Joanne Snap, who is the director of health professions advising, and she's an angel in human form. And she has helped me so much and so many students. But a lot of the times, like before that, like her department was set up like halfway through my time at Davis. So I didn't have that benefit earlier on. But, you know, I was one of those students that got a C in OChem. So, like, you know, I kept hearing a lot of things about how my grades weren't high enough, or, you know, I would need to do this and this to check off all the boxes and stuff. And that wasn't necessarily helpful or what I wanted to hear at that time. So, you know, it was kind of disappointing and it wasn't encouraging. But so I guess like your pre-med advisor, I would say, can look like many different things. Sometimes they can be someone who is in the pre-med advising department at your school, and sometimes they can be an older student, or like, you know, a mentor or another physician that you know, or, you know, any one of many different things. Or it could be Dr. Cupoletti, who was my pre-med advisor as well. But just try and find someone who is the right fit for you and who doesn't discourage you from trying to do the things that you want to do.
Can I add to that? We have a pre-med advising office at University of Cincinnati. And on one occasion, a student had been to our pre-med advising office, and he was quite happy with his application until he came to see me. And there were things like a C in chemistry that no one pointed out to him that was difficult. So maybe sometimes you need somebody who's a little harder sometimes and ask the hard questions so that you can correct any deficiencies that you have. So you have to be your hardest judge also.
Thank you so much for answering. And then another question we have is, like, we all talked about how important it is to get experiences. The question was, what are your thoughts or what are your recommendations on getting experiences currently due to this COVID situation and everything?
You said recommendations for getting experiences right now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've kind of brainstormed a little bit about that because I know some people that are getting ready to apply. And the only things that I can think of is if possible, I know that a lot of homeless shelters, at least in Tucson, need help. They're feeding the homeless more often than they normally would, and they need volunteers for things like that. I think also, I don't know if you can offer, maybe to run errands for physicians or nurses who are working on the front lines, or, to help them in any way that you can to collect supplies and drop them off at your local hospital to make masks. There's all sorts of people that need masks right now, and I know a lot of students here have been doing that kind of work. But I think getting involved and showing leadership during this time is definitely going to benefit you when it comes to your application.
There's also county health departments that are looking for volunteers to do contact tracing, and that usually involves it's kind of like case management. So you would be calling in and checking up on a patient who has tested positive for COVID, and then kind of helping them throughout that quarantine process. I know of one organization, but they're not currently looking for volunteers. But if you can find an email on the Sonoma County Department of Health or something like that, they might be a good resource to reach out to. Aside from that, I think just being creative in the volunteering that you do. I know there have been just a outpouring of different teaching opportunities that you can do through Zoom or something like that, for children who go to schools in New York City who have been really affected by this. So just things that you might not stereotypically think are pre-med volunteering opportunities are still out there. And I don't know, just try to be a good human. I think that will show up somehow.
Thank you so much for sharing these. We have a couple more questions. I'm not sure. Abigail has something to say. Give me a second.
I can speak at the end, just a few words at the end.
Oh, sure. I was gonna, yeah, if we have a couple more questions. I'm not sure, because I know everyone has something to do right after this meeting, or they have something, some important stuff. So I'm not sure if you have a couple more minutes to answer a couple more questions that we have here, or.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So next question was regarding BS versus BA degrees, whether that matters or not, and if you had thoughts about UC Berkeley, LA, or Davis for pre-med students, which would how would undergrad students is how does the prestige of an undergrad student undergrad school affect the med school applications for students?
I could just answer. The short answer is BS versus BA doesn't matter as long as you do the prereqs. I have many of my classmates have a friend of mine who was an English major. But as long as you take the Mcat, take the Mcat, do well enough, and take all the necessary prereqs, you'll be fine. It's just, for me, it was just pursuing what my specific academic interests were, and also is an efficiency thing. If you're doing a non-science major, then you're gonna have to take a bunch of science courses on top of the major specific requirements that you have. When it comes to these schools, they're all excellent. There's nothing wrong with any of those options. I don't think between them, and there's any just personally any significant difference, at least for me. But in terms of prestige, I mean, you can't lie and say it's not a factor. Half of my classmates are from Ivy League schools. It's just the way it is. But you always you do the best you possibly can, put forth the best application you can, make conscious choices leading up to the application process, rank schools, don't be afraid to apply to, the upper tier schools, but also have mid-tier and safety schools. And yeah, just give it your best shot.
Oh, thanks for answering that. And then our final question is regarding like rolling application. Like most schools, med schools have rolling applications. And so what is considered an earliest to apply for medical school?
June 1st, the deadline,
sure.
or not the deadline. That's like when the application opens, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, guys.
Yeah, something like that. Double check, but just apply the very first day that it opens and make sure you're prepared to do that. And there's certain steps you need to take to ensure that you're literally okay to press the submit button. You have to make sure your letters need to be like in the mail on the way there. You should have your transcripts already sent. They need to be when I applied, they still need to be physically sent over there. So it takes a certain amount of time to go through the snail mail. So it's like, you got to have all your ducks in a row by the time like day one, because it does make a difference. Since most schools are on rolling admission basis. And I just waited, I think 2 weeks beyond the first day to submit. And I feel like that definitely pushed back a lot of interview opportunities. Spots were already being filled up just based on a 2-week delay. So people are submitting like the minute, like the second that they can. Thousands of students doing that. So definitely try to be one of the very first.
I agree. And with rolling admissions, the way that it works is as soon as, those spots fill up, they fill up. And then everyone else is pretty much on a wait list. So I think it's to your advantage to apply as early as possible. Make sure your Mcat is in as early as possible. Your grades are verified, I think, within 4 weeks from when you submit. So you want to have pretty much everything lined up to go that first day.
And you can create your AMCAS or a COMIS with like a profile before that date. So it opens at a particular date and then it's open to submission for another date. Sorry, like the sun is in my eyes right now. Yeah, so when the application system has opened, make sure you go in and create your account, because that involves like a lot of just like inputting information and stuff that you can get out of the way. So then when the submission date comes up, you can just like upload your personal statement, do like the last minute things, and then just send it off.
Be aware that some schools like Cincinnati have what is called early admission. And so you could be selected in, say, November, and would have to tell them right away. So I'm not sure how prevalent that is, but some schools like Cincinnati have it.
I think with that, we are at the end of our meeting. I would like to first thank all the panelists for donating time and coming to speak to our panel hosted by the Bio Club. I think Abigail has something to say at the end, so I'll let her in. Oh.
Thank you. I also want to thank you all for doing this. And I just want to say that there's, as advisor for the Biology Club, there is a hidden subtext to this whole panel. And what you'll notice is that there are all these former SRJC students who are coming back to help you who are current SRJC students. And it is my goal and my dream that we create a network of students, an alumni network that supports each other, from Dr. Cupoletti, who is retiring from his career, through people like Sony and Mark and Danielle, who are starting their career, to people like yourself who are starting your biology careers, and that each of you will also have that opportunity to turn around and help other people later on when you have achieved more. Or just right now, where you can turn around and help a student who's just arriving at the JC. So it's really important to me that we consider this as one giant support network. And as part of that, you notice that I send out opportunities. I put together those emails once or twice a month. And the last several of them had lists of opportunities for people to involve. One was the link that Sony had given me about volunteering with the public health department to keep track of people who have to be quarantined and isolated and needed assistance and following up with them. And then the other was a whole series of citizen science research projects that people could get involved in. So don't feel like COVID-19 has shut you out from continuing your career. There's lots of things to do. So I guess I'd like to just say thank you so much for all of you guys for continuing my evil plot to take over the world with SRJC alumni. And I want all of you to keep on keeping on doing that. So thank you.
Thank you so
You guys.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think too, if anybody, I'm sure, I mean, I'm more than willing if anyone wants to email me and has any questions after this, even more specifically about MD, PhD programs, feel free to email me. Tenzing has my email, so.
Yeah, if you don't mind, would you prefer to put the email on chat so everyone can see it right now?
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, feel
Thank
free
you so
to reach out if anyone has any follow-up questions.
I'm studying for boards right now, so I will say, please give me a minute before emailing me.
We want to let your blood caffeine levels drop below 50%.
But after July, I will be here.
All right.
Hey.
And I think,
I can say that when you're putting together your application, or you've got it together and you'd like me to look it over, and as Shadra knows, I also give Facetime mock interviews, which are terribly frightening to the students, but usually very helpful.
Very gentle.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You'll have to ask Sunny what she thinks.
Would not recommend. No, I'm just no, but practice interviews when you get there are so important, and Dr. Cupoletti is so generous for giving us his time, and it was a really important experience to have. So
Even if it took years off your life.
yes. Heart racing so fast.
Well, it's nice to see everyone. Nice to meet you, Dr. Cupoletti. And to see
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Dr. Cupoletti. Good to see you,
Yes.
Mark.
You too.
Excuse me? Pardon me?
It was nice to meet you, Dr. Cupoletti.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you, and good luck with your studies. And we, by the way, we need all of you in this world right now. So just keep on trucking. We need you to get through.